This episode of the Design Your Dream Home podcast is brought to you by Crayon. Crayon is the custom residential architects network, and by Porcelanosa. Porcelanosa is a luxury lifestyle brand that brings modern European design into your home. You are listening to the Design Your Dream Home podcast with Doug and Steve. Doug and Steve are architects, and they're here to help you design your dream home.
We're really happy today to have John DaSilva and his wife, Sharon DaSilva, who also works in the firm of Polhemus, Savery, DaSilva, architects and builders from Cape Cod. Let me read a little bio about these guys. They do some really amazing work, and we'll share, of course, their website afterwards. But they are a leading integrated architectural design and quality construction firm on Cape Cod. I'm going to say PSD going forward now, PSD, Polhemus, Savery DaSilva. So PSD provides a highly collaborative process that is as special as the buildings they create. Their single source approach ensures seamless communication among the project team to ensure that they meet deadlines, stay on budget, and deliver quality workmanship. As design principal, John DaSilva is responsible for directing the architectural staff and setting the aesthetic direction for the firm's work. Raised in Danbury, Connecticut, John studied architecture at Princeton and later at Yale, where he received a Master of Architecture degree. He's worked at several distinguished firms, including Venturi, Rock, and Scott Brown, and Cesar Pelli & Associates. 2016, DaSilva was inducted into the New England Design Hall of Fame, recognizing him as one of a select group of residential design leaders in New England. Also joining us today is Sharon DaSilva, who is a senior designer at PSD. Born in San Diego, Sharon received a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Rice University. Enthralled by an architecture course she took during her time at Rice, she returned to complete a Master of Architecture degree. Prior to moving to Cape Cod, Sharon worked as a designer at Venturi, Rock, Scott Brown, and then nearly 10 years as an associate and project manager at Cesar Pelli & Associates. So I guess that's where you guys must have met. So welcome, John and Sharon, to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, good to see you. Thank you.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having us. We're honored to be here.
So I know your work. You've done some really spectacular houses, mostly in Cape Cod. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your firm for people who don't know of your work?
Well, as you mentioned, we're a integrated architecture and construction firm. Some people say design build. I prefer integrated architecture and construction because we are a full-fledged architecture firm, and we have the goals and ambitions, and we hope intellectual and artistic grounding to be that, where a lot of times we talk about design build, it's a designer, maybe not even a registered architect, that works for a builder. That's not us. We are a highly ambitious architecture firm and a craft-oriented general contractor.
You've explained a little bit about this vertical integration. I mean, again, we said design build, but I mean, I think that's sort of the name for it. But why are you working in this manner? I mean, maybe you can tell us some of the positives, and then why is it that some architects, let's say, work in a more, quote unquote, conventional way? What are the sort of positives of the way that you work?
Well, for one thing, in our business, there is often a lot of stress between contractors and architects, and in the process, it's not only is it stressful for the contractors and the architects, it is also stressful for the owners. And so we feel like we've taken that piece out. It's not that it always works absolutely perfectly, that we always see completely eye to eye with what's going on in the field, but we get a lot closer to a really smooth process this way. And we feel like we have more control over the design in the field because of that, because of our process.
It was our experience previous to Polhemus, Savery DaSilva, that the design bid build process, where there is supposedly a checks and balances between the contractor and the architect, was essentially a broken system, was not working, at least in our experience, the way it was supposed to. And there really, for that system to work, there needed to be a level of trust that didn't really exist. And our model really eliminates that. And there's still a level of trust, but it's within our company. We can't throw the contractor under the bus. The contractor can't throw the architect under the bus. And the owner benefits from that.
So when did you guys decide to start building the homes you were designing? How long have you been doing that?
Well, the firm, right from the beginning, the firm was founded by Peter Polhemus, who's still a partner here. He's late in his career, not as active as he was at the beginning, but he founded the firm in 1996 as an integrated architecture and construction firm. Sharon and I arrived 2 years after that to really shepherd the quality of design that Peter had hoped to get to. And so we've always been an integrated architecture and construction firm. It was his vision that be that way, and we've made it work.
The firms that you worked for previously, I mean, these are very famous firms from Philadelphia and New Haven. And so those firms don't work as an integrated design firm, right? I mean, that's an architect, and they work with different contractors. Was there something about, I mean, they're both very well regarded. Was there something about that experience that you felt like there was something missing? I mean, they were able to deliver really good work doing it the more conventional process where architect is separate from contractor.
Well, I think the work was outstanding. But I think there were still some disadvantages for the owners. I mean, I worked on projects at Cesar Pelle's office where we didn't even do the construction documents. There was another firm doing it. But, I also remember having dinner with the construction manager of a project and him telling me that they were planning on they were the low bidder, but they were planning on so many change orders that they would make a ton of money on the project.
Wow.
I think he'd had a little bit too much to drink, but so in that case, I felt like maybe the owner wasn't best served by the process.
Yeah, we worked with good people. A lot of the contractors we worked with, they were good people, but they were put in very difficult positions based on having to be a low bidder in order to get the job in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say that was a system that didn't work. It was not to the owner's advantage to require a low bid scenario, but many of them did.
Well, especially public projects,
university projects, which was really, in Sharon's and my experience at those offices, that's the kind of thing we mostly worked on. It may have been very different for the, Petronas Towers, for example. We didn't really end up in those types of projects. We gravitated more towards university projects, institutional projects.
Yeah, what you're actually describing is a very good reasoning for not always accepting, let's say in the conventional process, not always looking for the lowest bid, because what you're explaining is that sometimes someone's just trying to get the job, and they'll sort of make it back because the drawings are poor, let's say, and they're sort of salivating because they know that the drawings are deficient, and they'll make it back through these change orders. So I think that owners often say, hey, that's the lowest bid, and they feel like that's the best scenario, and in fact that really may be problematic. And it may also be problematic with the architect who didn't really provide good enough drawings. So maybe they're the low bid who didn't do good enough drawings, and then the contractor looks at the drawings and salivates and thinks, okay, I'll give a low bid, and now you have a disaster. So this is kind of some of the things that you're saying, that the way that you guys are working now, you don't have this is just not an issue.
Right. And one of the other things that we do that helps the owners with the cost is that we actually, because we have in-house estimating as part of our construction, we do a very detailed estimate right after schematic design, so that before we go forward with construction documents, the owners have a pretty good idea of what they're spending, and they can adjust things if it's not the right budget for them.
So why do you guys think this process, the way you guys are doing this, designing something and building it is a little bit more rare for architects to be doing if it really does work well for the client?
That's a good question. It's a tough question. It's much more difficult to use our process, to scale our process up, if you will, to larger buildings. I mean, we primarily do wood frame single family homes. And as a builder, we can really only go a certain distance geographically. So I think the ambition that the types of ambitions that we have to really be thoughtful, creative architects often are broader than what we've agreed to limit ourselves to. And that is a geographic region that we can, within a day's drive, if you will, or less than a day's drive. And primarily, we started here on Cape Cod. We now have a satellite office in Hingham, south of Boston. We've done work as far north as Gloucester, as far south as Charlestown, Rhode Island. We can't really go too much further than those locations. There are probably a lot of other reasons too. We have trained architects and trained contractors together at the top, as opposed to, we're not architects who have tried to become contractors. Aaron Polhemus, who's our partner and the CEO of our firm, is a trained builder.
Oh, wow.
So we have to put ourselves in each other's shoes, if you will, to be successful.
Right. So you're saying scale and location definitely affect for you guys whether or not or what you're doing. But I also think, it sounds like there's another level of complexity when you're both an architect and a builder, right? You've got to be good at two really big things. And so having somebody in your firm who is a trained builder allows you guys to do that.
Absolutely. And not only, as Sharon had mentioned, not only, do we have trained builders, we have trained cost estimators. And that's critical. And we, one of the great advantages for us as architects is I don't have firm statistics to point to, but just anecdotally, I feel like we get a higher percentage of what we design built than a typical architect.
Oh, interesting.
Because we really know what things cost. And we have our finger on that in real time. And we communicate with the client about cost with more accuracy right from the very beginning than I think a typical architect is capable of doing.
Interesting.
I think you're also working at a scale. The work is very custom. I think most of the work, it's not inexpensive. These are often grand residences. There's quite a bit of detail. You are really kind of showing off each time, meaning there's a lot of opportunity. The sites look often quite extraordinary. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of sort of design opportunity. There's responsibility. They're big projects. Is that fair to say? There's a lot there. There's a lot of opportunity, but there's also just a lot of detail.
Yeah, a lot of we have some very big houses, but we have some smaller projects too. But we tend to get clients who are interested in what we do. That's worked well for us. But that's the case with most architects. Though, if you have a track record there, after a while, your clients come to you because they want what you do.
Right.
So-
Well, I guess my question was sort of awkward, but what I was trying to say is that, for example, I might have a developer come to me and he's looking to have a turnaround, and I don't think architecture is necessarily the most important thing. It's part of the equation. Whereas, let's say they want to build a house, a residence for themselves, and they're willing to sort of invest the time and effort to hire you and to really explore and do something unique. It seems like there's more opportunity there and as a result, you need more, I think, more ability in a way. You need more. There's details. You're really studying. Every building looks like, it's not like you're copying something else. I mean, it looks like it's unique to that site, unique to that client, probably. I mean, can you speak to that?
It's wonderful to hear you say that, because that is very much our goal. And it's also very much our pleasure. As Sharon was saying, we've done projects. Our smallest project was our smallest house, ground up house that we've ever done is about 500 square feet. It's a little tiny guest house. I think the largest we've done is probably around 11,000 square feet, but we haven't done that many of those. It's not like we're not building the kinds of things here that get built in the Mountain West, say, or sometimes in the Hamptons, where you're a 20,000 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it doesn't matter to us. Quality matters, design opportunity matters, character, satisfying the client's vision, even when they don't know they have it. We've got to draw it out of them or develop it with them. Those are our passions. That passion can be fulfilled on a tiny project, on a big project. It can be fulfilled on an oceanfront site, on an inland site. Every client and every site is different, and therefore every house we do is different. And that's a great pleasure, great satisfaction in having that kind of opportunity.
So what about liability? A lot of architects, I would imagine, are reluctant to also be the builder because they feel like they're piling on liability in their office. Is that a challenge for you guys, or does it actually diminish the amount of liability you have or exposure when you're building a building too?
I think it actually diminishes the liability to some extent, because the whole process happens in-house.
All right, we're not going to have a contractor sue us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So yeah, and I think I remember reading somewhere a long time ago that even just doing construction administration on your own projects as an architect, just working as an architect, reduced your liability.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, I mean, and we sort of carry that another step further.
Right.
But yes, yeah, we're responsible for the whole thing, but we're also, I mean, in the way that a builder is responsible for the construction. And
Sure.
And we've got a good team here.
Can we just shift gears just for a second and talk about Cape Cod and maybe the style of architecture? I don't know if you're comfortable with that, but are there characteristics which are unique to Cape Cod that are different than another place? Let's say, I don't know, but if I look at the portfolio of work, maybe while they look outwardly unique and each one is different, but are there things which also join them together? Are there things that you find that are unique to that place, that are history, culture, climate, things that you find are unique to that place?
Yes, I think there's a fair amount that's unique. I mean, first of all, there's just the materials that are typically used here. I mean, almost all of our houses are shingled.
White cedar.
White cedar shingles, typically. And it's ubiquitous on Cape Cod. It's in residential architecture. Occasionally you'll see an outlier that's got brick or stucco, but basically there's shingles everywhere. There are also characteristics of the construction, because we're dealing with an area that's subject to a lot of weather and all the issues that go with being near the shore, salt water in the air. And
Vertical rain.
high wind, potential for a hurricane. So those are all things that go into our design.
There's a more philosophical, perhaps, scenario as well that allows us to do what we do here. There's a sort of a casual, weather-beaten character to the vernacular here that aligns really with our design vision. We do playful things and really, I might say, sort of happy looking houses because it's a place where people come to relax, and that's what they're looking for here. It may be very different than what they're looking for in their year-round home, if this is a second home we're doing, and many of our houses are, or maybe something very different than what people like in their office or in their institutional buildings. So the sort of weather-beaten, casual vernacular and the playful attitudes of people who are here align with what we love to do.
So talking about style a little bit, who are the main designers in the office, or are there other project managers or project architects that are also doing design work?
Well, we have an architectural staff, about 10 of us. The company as a whole is about 45 to 50 staff members.
Wow.
And we're thrilled that we have a really talented, committed group. Sharon and I, for the most part, initiate all the designs, but we have others who can do that and do it well. And we have some very talented architectural designers who can interpret our work and detail it appropriately. We're growing in that respect as well, as any good firm does.
This episode of the Design Your Dream Home podcast is brought to you by Crayon. Crayon is the Custom Residential Architects Network. Crayon is the leading resource and voice for architects who focus on collaborative design with homeowners. Crayon provides support, advocacy, and education for custom residential projects, as well as professional development for its members via forums, symposia, publications, and local activities. To learn more about Crayon, visit www.aia.org/Crayon. This episode of the Design Your Dream Home podcast is brought to you by Porcelanosa. With 30 showrooms in the United States and Canada, Porcelanosa is a luxury lifestyle brand that'll make your next project's dream into a reality. From a wide selection of tiles and mosaics to modern bathroom and kitchen cabinetry designs, Porcelanosa makes it easy to bring modern European design elements into your home. Visit porcelanosa-usa.com to learn more. So can you talk for our listeners a little bit about how the design process works? That is, I'm familiar with the gentleman I work with, Joe Moore. He'll do a sketch, he'll send it to me, and I turn it into something that's buildable. And that's, really abbreviating the process. But could you talk a little bit about how that works in your office?
Well, we like most architects, we start with programming with the client. And generally, for me, I will generally do the design myself, and I draft on the computer. I think I'm one of the few people of my generation that does.
I was going to say.
But I learned early on, so I'm just kind of through a fluke, and I've been working ever since. Although I do sketch, I can't draw directly on the computer without doing sketches first, and then I usually often get help finishing up the drawings.
Okay.
Meeting with the client.
I worked on AutoCAD extensively at Caesar Pelli's office, but it never felt right to me as a design rather than production tool. So I design by hand.
Okay.
I design in hand drawings. I don't know what Job does. I know he's an extraordinary architect, and I'd love to see his drawings
Yeah,
someday.
he does some beautiful hand drawings. Yeah.
There
He's a lot
is
of sketching, no computer work.
there is
Yeah.
something interesting about this generation of these architects that were in John and maybe Job Moore or Job, where maybe the designers are a little bit older and they kind of came up learning by hand, and maybe there's a certain style because of that. There's maybe a certain freedom or a looseness that maybe is aligning with kind of the work that you described, this beaten or idiosyncratic maybe or quirky architecture that is resulting. And often people complain about Revit as looking like it came out of a machine and it looking very robotic and not having any character. Do you buy into any of that? Do you think that, let's say, the newer generation that's coming up with things which are so automatic and easy, maybe they don't have those quirky moments or things, it's more hard to come by because of that? Does that make sense to you?
Well, I have yet to embark on Revit. Only I've started a little bit, but not gone very far. So I mean, I do my drawings in CAD,
Okay.
but I remember when CAD was new, and everybody thought that it was going to ruin architecture because it was so mechanized, and the early drawings that came out of it were like people doing space planning, where they had a plan and they put little cubicles in the drawing, and that was the very efficient use of CAD to do a drawing. But I went to a meeting, an AIA meeting in Philadelphia years ago when CAD was new, and they were talking, and they had different firms representing what they did with CAD, and most of them were these little cubicles on a floor plan. But I was working for Venturi, and our people brought a drawing of a statue in Trafalgar Square, the Corinthian column on it. And so what I got from that is that, CAD wasn't going to keep people from being creative. And I suspect that Revit won't either if you're really going to be creative.
I think that the problem comes when people think that any computer program, whether it be Revit or CAD or anything else, is a substitution for judgment or vision or creativity. They are none of those things. They're tools. And do they make it easier to do things? Perhaps. Parametric design is easier on the computer than it is by hand. However, don't forget, I think a lot of younger people don't know architectural history well enough. There was parametric design long before there were computers, and buildings were built. The futurists and others were built from drawings done by hand. Hans Scharoun in Germany, those drawings were all done by hand. So really, they're just tools, and it's very dangerous to think that they're anything else and take out human judgment.
No, thank you for that explanation. So, because sometimes you hear firms that are touting that they're so technologically advanced and so on and so forth, and so I wonder if clients sometimes get sort of overly impressed by that when maybe that shouldn't be what's stressed, and maybe it's more like what you're talking about. It's like, these are great tools. We're facile with all these tools, but ultimately, as you say, it's about judgment. It's about us understanding what it is that you're looking for and how we can best achieve that. And all the tools we have all access to all the tools. We can use them all. We'll use the right tool for the right job, something like that.
Absolutely. And we are using Revit quite a bit now. We're not doing all of our construction documents using Revit, although I suspect eventually it's going to go there. But what's happened, and this is was difficult to accept by people in our generation. We came up where we built models of everything, cardboard models, or foam core models, or wood models, or you name it. And Polhemus, Savery, DaSilva, we did that for years. Well, now we occasionally still do that, but much more often we do three-dimensional computer drawings as models. And at first I resisted that. But the other thing that's happened with technology is we meet face to face far less with our clients than we used to. It used to be you present design work to the client, you met face to face. Well, now we don't have to. We can use tools like GoToMeeting or Zoom meeting, where we share our computer screens. So we found ourselves building cardboard models, but then sharing them in flatland anyway on the computer screen, because our clients were not present to look at the model.
Wow.
So the switching from a cardboard model to a computer model really made no difference with respect to the client. They were going to look at it on the computer screen one way or the other. And you might think, well, just from our design point of view, would we prefer to have a cardboard model than a computer model? At first, I thought yes, but as we've done it more and more, well, we can do all the things. We can look at all the things we looked at in a cardboard model plus some. You can walk through walls. You can open doors and walk through them. You can have a lot of experiences. You can use a virtual reality glasses. You can do all the things we did with cardboard models plus some. So that's a big advancement, and we're using it to the full extent that we have time and resources to do it.
So are you guys careful about the timing to show clients three-dimensional imagery? I know, at least in my experience, Job is very careful about when to start showing images like that to the clients, because they, in their minds, once they can see it, they get locked into an idea or a look or an aesthetic or something like that.
Yeah, I think when we do that, we usually show them in our first schematic design meeting.
Really?
We do.
Yeah.
And actually, again, at first I was a little worried about that, thinking that could be dangerous for same reasons you're mentioning, Job talks about. However, the more we've shown three-dimensional images, the more we've learned that many people do not understand two-dimensional drawings.
Right. Very good point.
Really, it's become just a really clear communication tool for us, and it's solved more problems than it's brought up.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, one of the we've talked about it in other episodes where I've had clients that seem to bring things like these House idea books or Pinterest boards, and they send these to me, and I used to get nervous, but I think this is probably just a way of communicating, because suddenly you're presented with very finished things and a huge here's all this stuff that we like. And I said, well, hold on, we have to, as you, Sharon, had mentioned, why don't we program first? How many bedrooms do you need before we see the exact tile and the furniture that's going to go in your kitchen, something like this. So people are able to go very fast to the end, and it used to worry me. Now I sort of try to say, okay, it gives me a starting point. I kind of see there's certain themes that I see repeating that I can kind of glean from the things you're sharing with me. But it's going to have to go, for me, it's going to have to go a little slower. Like, we're going to have to go to the beginning and sort of see what we need, what you need, the programming, as you say, maybe the budget, and tease these things out before jumping so quickly to the finished images. But what has your experience been with clients like this? Do you have clients that are presenting you things like these idea books or Pinterest boards?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we find them helpful actually,
Okay.
because we get an idea of what they're thinking. Before, we used to get magazine clippings
Okay.
from people.
Right.
So, but yes, but one of the things we do try to do is go through them. If they've sent us those boards before, we go through them with the client. If they've sent us the boards before the programming meeting, sometimes we'll end the programming meeting by looking at all the images and say, what is it that you like about this image?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's, well, I just like that lamp, or something,
Right.
and other times it's, well, I was thinking it would be really nice to maybe have some paneling behind the master bed, in the master bedroom, so it's, so I find them helpful, but they're most helpful if you can actually talk about them and figure out what it is that's appealing to the client.
Where we have a kind of an advantage, I think, based on the number of years we've been in practice and how much we've built,
Mm-hmm.
and our books. We have 2 monographs have been published on our work, and an additional smaller book. And we generally give our books to our clients and ask them to respond to what they see of what we've done throughout our careers. And that helps get them beyond what the House and Pinterest more typically does, that Sharon was talking about, where they end up more focused on decorating when they look at those things. They like the feeling of an interior, but it has as much to do with the way it's furnished and the fabrics and the colors and that kind of thing, all of which are very important, but don't tell us as much in the early phases as really what their vision is for the broader character of their spaces and their forms and what they want their house to communicate visually.
And so let's say the extreme opposite. Let's say you have a client and he says, I love that house I just saw in Martha's Vineyard. I want that. How would you respond to that? Say, I don't want to go, I don't have the energy to deal with all of this Pinterest and clippings, and I just want that. I visited that house. I like that. What do you say to that person?
It's a good question. And we have had that.
Right.
We have had that situation. We certainly say, well, that's fine, but that was for not for you and on a different site than yours. And we need to discuss who you are and what you like and what your vision is independent of that. I guess there's a little bit of magic to it in a way. You put it all together, you put what they say they like and what they need and what their site is, and you mix it all up, and never does it come out looking exactly like something else did. And as I said before, that's one of the great pleasures of what we get to do.
Yeah.
Doug, you want to follow up anything?
Well, yeah, I love what you said about the variety in their work. First of all, I think the website is wonderful. It's very easy to navigate. There are like 5 or 6 topics, and then I can go and look at houses that fit underneath that. So I think it's a wonderful website. I think, there's clearly a common theme, materiality about all the work, and yet all of these buildings are custom. And I'm always thinking about our listeners, people that are trying to decide if they want to hire an architect, or should I hire an architect, and what are they really going to do for me? And it seems to me that people that shy away from hiring an architect never get those different eyes looking at their project, or the 30,000-foot view. They just design a home and it ends up looking a lot like other houses from websites or imagery that they see. And so the great thing about coming to a firm like yours clearly is that they've got 2 people or 45 or 50 people that not only are working for them, but that really want to give them something that's theirs. And it seems like we say the same thing about all these architects that we interview, and they're all just very different. But it's wonderful that there are people out there that can kind of step outside of every other project they've worked on and look at what their clients' needs are and then design something specifically for them. And you guys are doing that. So.
Yeah, well, it makes every day coming into the office a lot more fun.
Right.
And everything's
right.
different.
Every day is different.
But and the other thing is, I think I really do like people. I like many of our clients. I really like a great deal, and I think it's because you have to have a pretty positive attitude to build something.
Yeah.
You know? That's and the other thing that I would say is I think that I think that we are actually a pretty good value, because houses are expensive. For some people, that's their biggest investment, and for a lot of our clients, maybe that's one of a couple of investments. But still, that an architect can help you maximize that investment, that get the most out of the site that you have.
The discussion is
really
interesting
really add value to it.
It's interesting because what we talk about, let's say, design and business, and I think that, let's say that a client came to you and said, I want exactly that, and you think, oh, I could just give them the same drawings and this would be great business because I don't have to actually expend as much energy and everything's done. That's good business. And yet the best design firms, they don't operate like that. They think that's not what we do. We are trying to make something unique for you. And yes, it's going to be more expensive. It's going to take more time and so on and so forth. And ultimately, maybe I won't make as much money if I simply copied what I was doing before, but that's just not what we do, right? I mean, can you talk about that, John?
It's not what we do. And frankly, it's not what people who come to us ask for. I think they can see that there are characteristics that all of our projects share, but none of them are repeats of the others.
Right.
So it's a pretty rare, I'm not sure it's ever really happened that somebody has come and just said, I want that. I want just that.
But there are famous firms that you and I, John, know very well that maybe the biggest sort of calling is that, oh, I can take this house and put it over there and it's the same house with the same details, the same aesthetic, and some people like that brand. And what we're saying is that a firm like yours, and maybe firms that we admire the most, are the ones that can make those connections that make it feel like it's anchored to that place. It's for you. It's for this particular place and this particular time. And it's not simply that I'll do it over here and then I'll just drop it anywhere. I mean, I think some firms do talk about that being kind of their, that's their calling card, that you get my brand.
Yeah, it's no fun. That wouldn't be nearly that interesting as what we do. It might be, I don't know. We might make more money if we did that.
Exactly,
but,
right. Better business, right?
That there's a lot more to life than money, and we and everyone here loves what we do, and we want to continue to love what we do.
Any last thoughts? We're running on to about an hour here, so any last thoughts or any things that you can share for our homeowners? Any good pieces of advice?
Well, one thing which I know might be surprised to hear me say this, but because we do a lot of new construction, new houses, but we also have done a lot of renovations.
Okay.
And if you have a property with a house that has good, strong structure to it, and if you can renovate it and make it, if it works to renovate it, I think that you can get a homeowner can get a lot more for their money with that. We've done some renovations where the cost of it produces a like new house, where we've completely gutted it and changed it, and you couldn't tell that it was originally a renovation, but that the homeowner, because they started with something that was already there, actually and it ended up getting a lot more than they could have if we'd started from scratch, ground up.
So that's a good point. So meaning somebody, let's say somebody is looking at something and they can come to you actually in the beginning and say, hey, listen, I have this. This is kind of my goal. Do you think that this is something that we can work with? And maybe that you guys do a kind of an analysis, a cost benefit, but also a design analysis to say that, yes, this does have good bones and we really can work with this and make this what you want. Or you could say, no, I don't think this is going to achieve ultimately what you're looking for. So I think that's a good point.
We do that, and just the basic idea that saving embodied energy that's in a building that already exists is ecologically sound is often on our minds. Sometimes there's no quality really that is reusable. In certain houses, there are a lot of low quality post World War II houses built that it would take more embodied energy to reuse than you're saving by reusing it.
Right. We've all been through that.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners find you? Because now we've talked a lot about your work, and of course, Doug and I have looked at your work, but how can people put work to the kind of words that you've expressed today?
Well, you mentioned our website, and thank you for the compliments on it. It's psdab.com, which stands for Polhemus, Savery, DaSilva Architects Builders.com. We're very concerned with sharing what we do, so we work hard on that website as we have on our books. And really, that's the place to start.
And they can find your books also from there?
They can. Amazon, other book sites. If you just put in our name, you'll get to them.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much for spending some time with us, and I'll look forward to talking to you again, John.
Thank you. We're honored to have been asked, and you do some great interviews. We've enjoyed listening to them.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
you. Sharon. Thanks, John.
Happy holidays, guys.
Bye now.
You've been listening to the Design Your Dream Home podcast with Doug and Steve. If you have any questions or want to give us any feedback on the show, feel free to reach us through our website at thedougandsteveshow.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.